This vid is going to show you solo Grandmaster Nightfall on a Hunter. The weekly featured Nightfall this week obviously is still inside Terminus. So I've already showed Titan and a Warlock run this week. I hadn't had a Hunter run done this week, so I figured I'd round out a Hunter run with a unique, interesting setup. We've already done a -40 under power GM. We've already done that. We've done an easy version, a -25 version, right, with a good loadout that anyone can really copy. And then a couple of people were asking for a Hunter run, so here's a Hunter run, I guess. We're using the exotic hand cannon Malfeasance with the exotic boots, Lucky Pants, as this is a high DPS exotic primary when you combine these two exotics together with the Lucky Pants on a Hunter. You can play on Void, Solar Arc or Stasis with this, it doesn't matter. It just depends on your preference. To be honest, I'm only on Void. It isn't so much for the invis, it's more for the fact of my Moebius Quiver. I want to take advantage of the Void Cube burn, and I was only on Nightstalker for that. But if you wanted to go Gathering Storm, Arc Super, you could. If you want to go Blade Barrage, you could also. So I've skipped the initial champs. I'm just going to take out this barrier though. I'm not going to skip this barrier. Now we didn't quite kill him in time, but that's fine, because what I'm going to do anyway is farm super energy off this champion. Pay attention to the left hand side, because it's actually handy to have your super when you get to plate 1. Now I won't have my super for plate 1, or I wouldn't have had. The reason why I'm having to farm it is because I have skipped all the ads at the start. But it's a little trick. You can apply this strategy in a lot of GMs where you can farm super energy off champs, because obviously intellect works differently to what it used to work. It's tied off how much damage. If you're dealing damage to a tanky target, you're going to get a lot of super energy, and if you're using a rapid fire weapon, it's even more, it's even quicker. So for the first plate I used a nade and my machine gun. I have got super, but it turns out I didn't need to use it right away because there's a dog stuck behind that portal door. This stops the second spawn happening so soon. The dog will port to you. Here's the dog, and that will eventually spawn in the unstoppables. So they will always spawn. It just depends on how quickly they do. If you don't get so lucky with the dog getting stuck, you still have enough time to cap the plate, but you would have to step back because the unstoppables will just be about approaching the plate. That's where you've got to stop them. Now I'm using the exotic hand cannon Malfeasance, which has intrinsic unstoppable rounds built into the gun. Well, it's not the same way as a traditional unstoppable hand cannon that you would see. It's based on the detonation damage that you do. So you need to have a couple of stacks of that detonation damage. That is counted as unstoppable. It's not the actual aim and down sight section of it, which I see that's what will be putting people off. But honestly, once you learn it, you're melting champs with this build. Like even on Grandmaster, you're melting them within one shield break. But this is how it works with the Lucky Pants. Every time you swap to a fully loaded hand cannon, you get a 5-second boost of damage, but that stacks up the more crits that you get within that 5 seconds, so you can just melt. But if your hand cannon isn't fully reloaded, it won't proc, or you'll get the debuff out of luck. So it's a hot swap weapon, this. You need to always be thinking about, well, don't have it out when you're running around and you're doing general ad clearing. Only swap to it when you want to start to use it. Don't just run around with that gun equipped, because you'll keep getting out of your luck. You'll never have the buff ready. It's a hot swap weapon, this, with Lucky Pants, of course. So for example, now I break shield, I switch to the hand cannon. Now look at the range, look at the damage it's doing from that range. Bear in mind the hand cannon's experiencing some range drop off there, still melting the champ. With this room as well, you want to take it in phases. So whatever phase you want, you always deal with the barrier, right? Unstoppables spawn in barriers at the back of the map. You can have a problem where there can be enemies in the middle island and then enemies behind you. There can be an ambush thing if you get the ad spawns incorrect, if you kill the wrong ads. So just follow as I'm killing them, I guess. If you kill them out of sequence, you're going to have issues. We'll shoot the boss to initiate next phase. On this phase, you want to stand at the back of the map. This way, the snipers' scions cannot get you. They have a range drop off. The barrier is going to push you, which is perfect. The unstoppable won't, because it's not within their power to push you all the way here, unless you aggro them, which you're not going to be. They'll be de-aggroed at this point. So you're just waiting for the barrier, because as I said, if you were to kill the unstoppable first, a barrier would spawn to my right where I am now, which is a big problem, so don't do that. Because then you're having multiple champs shooting you from multiple angles. So this champ right here, this barrier, was wanting to back up behind this rock. Wasn't having it though. I'll get a reload on the Malfeasance. I haven't got Marksman's Dodge on for obvious reasons. Gamblers. So that I can get Trapper's Ambush if I need to use it. But if I was on a solo hunter, I probably would have put on Marksman. Snipers next. Always deal with that. You'll have a bunch of snipers at the back of the map. Like I said, they can't hit you from here, so it's a free shot for you to take them all out. They'll be unstoppable in mid. We'll deal with the ads first, because, like I say, once you kill that unstoppable, that barrier spawns in, and the barrier can shoot you from middle island all the way over to here. So deal with the legionaries first. Deal with them however you want. You can deal with them from range. I'm trying to showcase the hand cannon a little bit. I haven't got a buff there, it's out of your luck, but it's actually a decent spot to stand here, because the unstoppable doesn't know what to do. The ads sort of group up, which it's handy if you want to nade them. So yeah, it's just a case of taking them all out one by one. Once you've dealt with the final ad, make sure that you've reloaded your Malfeasance, and so you can get ready for unstoppable damage. Because the gun isn't quite as good on unstoppable damage as it is on a barrier, because the first couple of shots are wasted getting the stun. I'll use a tether here just to speed it up a little bit. Whereas on a barrier, you break with the barrier shield weapon, which is a bow for me. You then can swap to the hand cannon and absolutely melt. It still melts unstoppables as well. It's just that the first initial shots are wasted to get the stun, which it takes a couple. I'm going to try and aggro these gladiators onto me, because I don't want to deal with the barrier yet. I'll use a bit of machine gun. Because we're using double primary, we're going to get an increased rate of heavy ammo drops. Also, exotic primaries have an increased chance to drop heavies on kill. That's an intrinsic perk to all exotic primary weapons. I feel as though people still don't know this change. Happened ages ago. Right, it's been in the game forever, so not forever, but quite a while at this stage. So yeah, you're gonna notice an increased drop rate on heavy.
Excellent work, Captain. You are at 50% completion of this task.
Final phase for this room, same again. It's snipers at the back, and unstoppable and a barrier spawning mid. It's a case of, yeah, just dealing with the initial ads. You're waiting for a barrier. There's two barriers. One barrier will push, one barrier will go to the back of the map. It's the barrier that pushes here that you want to take out first, of course. We're going to show you the hand cannon from range. Look at the damage it's doing. See, that's serious damage right there. Because it's experiencing massive range drop off, and it's still doing the damage that it does. I've seen a lot of talk lately, since Revision 0 came out, about backup DPS. Exotic primaries that have backup damage, like Outbreak Perfected, Touch of Malice, Revision 0 of course, stuff like this. Why is Malfeasance not in the discussion? I don't understand why people... They're talking about those weapons, but yet Malfeasance does more damage than all these weapons. I don't know why it's not getting brought up. I know it's for Hunter Pacific, but that's fair enough. It's still a high damage weapon. Yeah. A lot of people talking about hierarchy of needs and stuff like. Hierarchy of needs is all right, but I tried it. I tried it before this run, and it's terrible on barrier. How? I'm not joking. It's really bad weapon on GM. I can't believe how bad it is. It's only good when the guidance ring is up, and if your guidance ring isn't up, your damage is poor with the weapon. Really good mid game, low end stuff, patrolling, lost sector. But when you get down to the nitty gritty, you want to put Taikus on. If you want a solar exotic bow, you're going to put Taikus on. You're not going to put hierarchy of needs on. It's a shame, because as I say, I've tested it. It's terrible. It might be just that it's bad for barrier, but it doesn't matter. That's just how I'm judging it this season, because barrier bows up. So I've put it on, tried it. It's struggling. It's taken 3-4 shots to break a barrier's shield. Guidance ring doesn't work well with the barrier, like the total damage on a barrier champ. So it was worthless. Like I say, if you want to see footage, I have it, but it was really bad. So that's why I was like, well, what other total damage, high damage weapons are there? And Malfeasance, like I was wanting a Hunter run, so I was like, oh, I'll do a Malfeasance run, because I haven't done a Malfeasance run in quite some time. We use a Tether here. This Unstoppable is in our way a little bit. Oh no, we killed the barrier, we're fine. So that was actually decent. Killed both barriers with the Tether, while the Tether was still up. Once the Unstoppable dies, there'll be an extra wave of enemies. This can kill you if they ambush you, so you've got to make sure that you get into safety before they collapse into mid. Don't pick up the orb, it's tempting to do it, but when you do, there'll be a barrier spawn in middle. Again, it's dealing with things methodically and in stages. If you deal with things like this, you should have this approach to everything, especially when you're in high-end solo content. If you're not as skilled as another person, you can see more skill than them if you deal with things methodically. And then a skilled person won't have any advantage on you because you're playing the content the right way anyways. So it wouldn't matter that someone's more skillful than you. All the difference would be is that they might get it done quicker than you. But there's a lot of things, as I say, I've tried to explain to people about this whole solo thing. And you really don't need to be that good at the game to... You don't need to have a mass amount of skill, but you need to have a mass amount of knowledge. To be really, really good at the solo, you need to have a mass amount of knowledge. But the skill thing, you can be average, but because you've got the knowledge, it bumps your skill right up. And it doesn't matter that your aim's not quite as good as the next guy's, or you're not quite as fast. You're still going to get it done because you know the rhythm of the activity that you're doing. Take, for example, each GM, it has its own rhythm. They have their own rhythm, and once you practice them over and over, it gets to the point where it's second nature to you, and you're just rerunning something that you've already learned in the past. That's why you'll see a lot of high-end solo players, they'll solo the GMs right away because they've learned them already. The only difference is there's some variables on champion mods, which is no big deal, because you should have learned every weapon type anyways. To master the game, you must learn every weapon type, every perk, and know what everything does in the game. Once you know that, it doesn't matter what champion mods come up. It can be anti-barrier sidearm, doesn't matter. It won't matter. Unless it's particular GMs. You know, maybe like Lightblade, that would be a fight to you. But for the most part, it shouldn't be, you know, wouldn't be a problem. This room's done now, we're just painting out these gladiators. Goal is obviously to isolate, always isolate adds away from champs. So kill all adds if possible. We're gonna get a stun on this barrier. Showcase the gun, it's absolutely melting, especially up close, look at this. We're not hitting every crit, but he's melting. He's getting melted because Lucky Pants is stacking with the Malfeasance. If I used Hierarchy of Needs, that ain't matching that nowhere near. Nowhere near is it doing as much damage as that. But there's a caveat to it. It's Hunter Pacific. Malfeasance will still be decent on other classes. It just won't be the same as what I'm doing right now. Make sure you fill up on ammo. Ammo's really easy for me. You'll notice there's bricks everywhere. I'm just going to make sure I fill up on my 331. That's what the gun holds. Just make sure I do it. You can use any machine gun in this, by the way. You don't have to use a void one, although you're better off using a void one because there's an acute burn. You may as well use it. Take advantage of it. Don't use a solar machine gun. Why? There's no solar shields. You know? So yeah, any void machine gun. If you want to use the Europa one, the Europa Raid one, use it. If you want to use corrective measure, use it. Whatever void machine gun you want to use. But Retrofit is still really good right now. People think it's nerfed. People think it's... Oh, now it's not good anymore. Volatile Rounds is still a top tier perk in PvE. I've tested it and had a go with it. It's still good. It's just not doing what it was doing before, which was a bug ultimately. Which I told people that as soon as it come out, it will get nerfed this, and they did nerf it. It's obvious because it would be a strain on the game with Volatile Rounds proccing like that. In the new raid, it would just crash everybody's game. So they had to nerf it for that reason. It's now within line, but still, target lock machine guns are still top tier picks and are not to be slept on, especially Retrofit with the God Roll craft. So it's still a weapon you want to bring to Nightfall and that you're probably going to want to use. But again, it depends on what buffs and nerfs they do. So we're on to the final boss. You can shoot some VIP targets, say the Hydra and the Void Minotaurs. They may drop you ammo. They'll also give you score. So if you're doing a lower end Nightfall and you're close to 100k, kill them, you'll get 15, 20k points for free. So get to your plate as soon as possible. This is your first capture plate at the boss. Now this plate's pretty tough because the timing of the ads you can't really help. It's the same time in every. You have the same amount of time. You can't cap it quicker. So you're probably going to want to use a super here. I do a tether right and tether left because there'll be dogs to your right. And there'll be some legionaries to your left. Use machine gun. Don't let any ads land on your plate. And then it's an easy cap. If you mess up that first plate, you might be stuck in a never-ending cycle of killing dogs and legionaries because they're infinitely spawning. They're on a timer. So make sure you cap it first time to make it easier for yourself by using the tether. Left and right. If you're using blinding grenades, I've already showed that strat off. Now if you're using blinding grenades, you don't want to use Malfeasance. Why? Because you'd be doubling up on Unstoppable and there's no need. And then you wouldn't have any barrier then. So if you're using blinding grenades, then use a barrier weapon to accompany it. Like Outbreak Perfected or Graviton Lance. Or an adaptive munitions pulse rifle. Or Wish Ender. Or Arbalest. The list goes on and on and on. Whatever you want to do. That's a different type of strat. Probably the go-to strat, but this is interesting and unique, and it piqued my interest to see how it would perform, especially on this boss because Kargen is very tanky. Being known at one stage in the game's life cycle, Kargen was the highest, had the highest HP of all bosses. Kargen. Whether that's the case now could be still the case, honestly, because a lot of the new Nightfall bosses aren't tanky. Not even Alakul on Lightblade. He's not a tanky boss. So, but the difference is with Alakul is way more threatening, obviously, than Kargen, like 1,000 times more, just because he's mobile and he's got a slam attack. So, whereas this boss will just stay in middle, which is obviously a massively different. Just notice the damage we end up doing with Malfeasance at times. We've got a tether here. We're going to use it in a minute. We'll use it now. We'll use it now while this adds up. We'll try and get some Malfeasance damage in. I don't get what I want in because he does his void stream. I should have been on top of the block. Because that's the only debuff I actually have right now is Tether. I didn't have Echo of Undermining on. And it didn't matter that I didn't, to be honest. With solo operative and high energy fire, melting champs anyways. Once I get room with just me and the boss, you'll see how much damage I do with Malfeasance in a minute. So swap to it here. Just look at the damage. It's absolutely chunking. Like that sort of damage I've just done there would be a very similar damage to like 4 linear fusion rifle shots. Bear in mind that's heavy, and it'd be like Taipan. That'd be sort of similar damage to what I've just done there. Probably three linear fusion rifle shots. When you get your swap going correctly, and you know. The key is to always reload with it once you're done. Obviously, if you've got marksman's dodge, you can do a quick marksman's dodge, but I'm not using that for obvious reasons, as I've already said, because I'm trappers, ambush gamblers, so I can at least get my stuff back when I want to go invis for ammo and stuff like that. But you by no means need invisibility to cap the plates. I've only used Nightstalker for this run because I wanted its Moebius Quiver for damage purposes. Because it's Vortex burn. So, but I could have went arc. I would have still been able to cap the plates because we've got a machine gun to cap plates. Machine gun is the heavy choice to defend these plates for me for this particular run. Watch you don't stand in the void streams at all for any length of time because obviously it's a Vortex burn and you do get melted. So you got to be careful. Don't do more than half HP to the boss. If you do that too early and you're not ready to cap a plate, you're not going to cap that plate unless you're using blinding grenades. If you're using blinding grenades, you'll get away with it. If you're not, you're probably not going to cap your plate, and you're going to either use a super depending on what class you're on, or you're going to have to retreat. And then when that happens, it's a mess because then you've got gladiators and dogs to deal with. You'd have to clear all them and then try and cap again. So every opportunity that you get to cap a plate, don't mess it up. So take the steps like before half HP, kill that spawn of enemies of legionaries. Because you don't want legionaries up when you start capping your first plate. Also choose a hard plate, don't just sit in middle. Middle's easy to cap, so leave that till later. What you want to do is cap one of the hard plates first because you're making a hard plate easier, so right or left. Because the line of sight on enemies isn't very good, the gladiators can get a jump on you easily. So that's where I cap right always. That's my routine in this now. I've done it for long enough. I'm also going to use a tether because the ads are going to be on top of us so quick and we haven't capped plate yet. So tether is totally worth doing it here. And then spam machine gun. Don't worry about your ammo on your machine gun because you're not really using it too much for damage anyways, especially with Malfeasance. Malfeasance is giving you all the damage in the world that you need really. And it can be re-procced every 15 seconds. So when gladiators are pushing you, you can do the same thing. Get that, you know, go invis, get your hand cannon reloaded. And then as you break out of invis, swap to hand cannon and then you're melting the gladiators. And you're stopping them as well because don't forget it's got unstoppable rounds. It's working the same way. It's going to actually stun lock the gladiators and knock them back, which is good. So it's a good way of actually dealing with the ads that push you. The ads in middle don't worry about. Don't clear any of them. The void backpacks, legionaries, don't take out of them any of those because they'll respawn anyways, so it's pointless. It's a pointless exercise. So what you want to do is just keep them in middle. Take out all the dogs, gladiators of course, and then now you want to focus on your next capture. So I'm going to capture left next because I think that's the next hardest plate. And I have a good way of rounding up the enemies. So you lure the enemies over one side of the map. Because of how slow Cabal are, you get such a time gain on capturing a plate if you lure them over one side and then go and capture the plate on the opposite. It even enhances it on invis, because you're not going to need invis to cap the plate, but you can use invis to get to the plate before the ads even realise that you're there, meaning that you have more time to cap the plate. So you're going to see. So I'm going to do a trapper's ambush here, dodge to get it back, and I'm running to the plate. The ad sort of knows I'm there because I dodged too close, but I'm still on the plate before the ads can properly realise I'm here. So I'm gaining time. So I'm ahead of time on this plate. Bear in mind, if you're slow on capping your plates, I'm on about 2 seconds slow. I said this in the video. It can be a death. Like right here, I'm actually playing a little bit risky. I'll cap the plate in time. I could have invis sooner than that, definitely. Don't know what I was doing there. But for the most part, yeah. If you use these little tactics, it all adds up for increased time on the plate. I'm going to use a tether here on the gladiators that have come out, because it's always a bit of a fuss dealing with them, because you back and forth, nade, invis, then wait for hand cannon buff and all that stuff. So I actually just tethered them to get rid of them. You won't get one shot by a gladiator, not even at -40. But they'll definitely two shots, so you've got to manage. You know, if you're gonna finish one, that's fine, but just look, is the one behind him? No, if it's the last one, that's fine. Finish. Finish all remaining dogs before we start next plate. It's middle now. Now middle's the easiest plate. We'll use the same tactic. We'll round the ads up on right side. We'll go invis. We'll invis past them. Start capturing the plate and then break out the machine gun and melt them all. And that can be done on any class. Stasis, Solar, you can go 6-shooter if you want. I've actually done this on 6-shooter. I've actually sold this as a 6-shooter golden gun. It's actually interesting. So I cap the plate, pop your 6-shot golden gun, which is more than 6-shot now, of course, because it refunds bullets. You can do it with anything, honestly. Arc Strider, and I'm on about the Roman Super, I'm not about Gathering Storm. Anything. Stasis, Revenant will be good in this, because you can pop your super immediately, freeze them all, do good damage. Gathering Storm I feel as though is probably best, even though it's arc, just because of how much damage it does. So it probably would be the go-to. I just stuck with this though, just because I wanted to use Moebius. I wanted to use the Tether with Malfeasance. That's what it was for the debuff. So that's all 3 plates capped. Now it's just the final boss. We have to clean up though before we start, because you can't just start damaging the boss when there's gladiators. They're going to kill you. So we'll finish these off first. We'll duck and weave left and right as we do. Rotating left and right. That's another good thing about this, is when obviously you're safe when you break out of invis, when you're in invis, but you can break out of it with massive damage and then re-invis up. Sort of like a glass cannon type setup. Well, we're not glass cannons because of resilience, but you know what I mean though, a burst damage sort of setup. You know, do massive damage just after you come out of invis and then re-invis up, sort of thing. Shame volatile rounds doesn't work, but obviously Malfeasance isn't void. We're going to melt these backpacks that are pushed to the right, and now we're ready for damage again. So I'm going to do a tether here, switch to hand cannon, get some hand cannon damage in. I'm not going to double tether right off bat, so I'll do my final tether at the end. That's generally the better way of doing it. I see so many hunters make that mistake of, especially when they're on obvious rigs, they'll just back-to-back tether 3 times. That's not the play. What you need to do as an efficient hunter, you should be tethering, doing some damage, right? Maybe a rocket, then tether a second time, maybe with a horde, whatever you're using, and then wait until the last second to tether again for your third. You shouldn't be back-to-back tethering, unless it's like something where you're killing something quickly, like a champ. Then yeah, you will back-to-back tether. But when you're doing damage on a raid boss or a nightfall boss, you want to be spacing out your tethers a little bit more to maximize the damage out of it. Boss is fairly weak now though. This was a fun run, this, especially when we got to the boss, because I I got to really use the hand cannon on the boss and stuff and just melt him. It's also stun locking the boss's Malfeasance because it's unstoppable again. It's stopping the boss. People still, to this day, don't understand the concept of Overload working on miners, right? And barrier mods working on miners. So unstoppable will flinch an enemy. Think of it as flinch, right? Like a boss, you can flinch an enemy. It stun locks them, right? Whereas Overload, what that does is it lowers their... You're more tanky because they do less damage to you. So think of it as you debuffing them. You are making them weaker when you hit them with overload rounds. Anything in the game. Boss, ultra, minor, champ, whatever. Barrier is a bit more interesting. It sort of flinches them as well. Especially Barrier SMG, which we haven't had for ages. So it sort of adds a little bit of flinch as well, the Barrier. And it has other capabilities of shooting through Phalanx's shields. And shooting through... penetrating certain shields, basically. The boss has done a tether right on our rock, which was unfortunate. Right, because I was wanting to get my damage. I ended up doing it here though anyway. That's fine. Look at how much damage we're doing. Really good. Get a reload. Ads have come out again. We'll get a bit of map rotation going on. Don't stand in one place too much. Unless you play on certain classes like grenade class setups, like Arc Titan, Storm Grenades, Void Walker, or like a Titan Barricade with Heart of Inmost Light. But there is grenade builds on the Hunter, don't get me wrong, but they're nowhere near as effective as the other two classes for grenades. There is Conqueror, Gauntlets, there's Shinobu's Vow. Shinobu's Vow's alright to a degree because you can jolt everything, but the skip grenade themselves aren't very strong or powerful enough. We're on really the last wave of enemies, to be honest. We've got loads of machine gun ammo as well. I was just having too much fun with the Malfeasance. That was the troubles. But you can see the nature of where you play and how you play this. Because obviously if you play to the right hand side, this block to my left, the void stuff can't hit you from here. So it's the go-to place to sort of play from. There's two phalanxes in mid. Like I was saying, barrier. So we can look, we're shooting through the shield. It's going to be a bit more interesting next year because you can now penetrate barriers with supers and stuff like this and abilities, or it's going to be attuned to elements. I worry the champion's going to be too easy at that stage. However, I have said in the past that I would have liked your super to be able to stun champs. So they are doing what I asked years ago that they should do. In that case, they need to double up champions. There needs to be far more champions than there is. That's the only way of sort of balancing it, because it would end up being too easy. That was a solo GM on this, while using Malfeasance. Hope you enjoy. Thank you.